after a new piece of property has potentially become available, and we've had 2 more years of demographics to add to the stuff.
And also, I know a lot of people have been asking questions or have issues. In the past, people have gone to different grammar schools. They might not have been in their home district, so what have we done with that?
Variances, as they were called, was a discovery of mine when I came. I'd never been one that had, and basically it was past practice because there was space. That, and again, I agree with the idea we want to help our constituents. If there was an issue where a parent had better health care for one school versus one school versus another, and we had space, you could request from the district that instead of going to your home school, you went to a different school. That continues in certain respects, but we changed the procedure and actually we built a procedure around it. Informed parents, we have documentation that went from the board. Prior to that, it runs through central office, and at this point in time, while variances still exist, we've minimized that to begin with because one of the things we had to make known is that if you're varied, you still have your home school and that's where you live. We have to keep those populations. If you accept the variance and attend a different school, should that school find itself in a situation where they cannot house the students who are zoned for that school, so you may have to revoke the variance and send you back to the school for which you were initially zoned. We've significantly lessened over the past 3 years the number of variances, with the number one reason we'd accept the variance being if there is an older sibling, older or younger sibling, who is forced to attend a different school other than their home school because of special services, that we would offer, if possible, to the parent that the non-special needs student, sibling, attend that school as well. Other than that, we really haven't approved your typical, I need this for care and the rest, but what we have done is continue to honor the existing variances, because at this point, as I mentioned before, shuffling around when shuffles a problem around, and to move a student who at the end of the day is our focus, from one elementary school to another when they've been in an elementary school is in some way, while not terminal, detrimental to the student's progress. So unless the district was going to see a specific benefit, we don't take moving the student out. So that has, of course, been addressed. And those people need to reapply for variances every year in February.
Ms. Leslie, and I feel for the parents a little bit, and I'm sure we all do, because we all receive your emails, and I appreciate the time and energy you put into it. And I know it's difficult to sit there because as a parent and not be able to voice your concerns right now. But I just a little update on what our plan is when we present it to the commissioners and to the PTO at Yannicott. What is our definite plan going forward September 2015?
Again, when we had our initial retreat, the plan was put forward at that point in time, but based on the numbers, we felt better to try it out. And working with Mrs. Carollo at the time, as I mentioned, we had 24, 24, 24, and as fates would have it, as students were transferring into Yannicott School, they were all in 2nd grade. And so we're at now 25, 25, and 26. Which again, while not outside of the realm of practice, it's not what we look for in elementary schools. That was determined with Mrs. Carollo going back to December, when I said November, December, that we were not going to be continuing class sizes at that level to begin with. And we returned to the initial plan, which was at some point to either add another section and to take over one of the exterior spaces that existed, the recommendation that came initially from the architect, or to look at moving 6th grades to the existing middle school based on what could be housed. Conversation at the last retreat was, again, my recommendation is that, even at the time, if we had to leverage external space to Yannicott, that would only be for 1 year. And that, at that time, we need to make a significant plan to move those students out into the middle school. The existing middle school, if you take this into account, what was presented, if you remember, at the last retreat, if you take that we have 2 types of elementaries, large and medium, if you will. The large schools being Lincoln, Washington, and Yannicott, the medium schools being Radcliffe and Spring Garden. The existing middle school, and working with Ms. Egan, we actually built a schedule going back prior to the previous retreat. Staffing, room utilization, lunches, security, entrance and exit, arrival, dismissal. At that point in time, this building can only house 1 large and 1 medium at the most. We can house both mediums, or we could house 1 large, any combination.
1 large meaning 1
Lincoln, Yannicott, or Washington, and either Spring Garden or Radcliffe here. And the thought being we just wanted to present what was maximizable, so we weren't necessarily singling out one group of students. The issue becomes how the board wants to do that. If we want to bring them over as an annex of the schools they are coming from, that's a different application with the state, or if we want to bring them over now as students of the middle school.
When is our educational projected plan to do that? To bring Yannicos 6th grade to the middle school, when is our projected plan to do that?
The recommendation from me, since things have changed based on our size, remember, was that we have to adjust the short-term and long-term need. If the board is convinced that we will be going for a referendum to modify in some way, shape, or form this building and bring 6th grades here, then the recommendation from the administrators is that we do whatever we need to do to move those students here as quickly and respectfully as possible. At this point in time, as soon as I would recommend we do that, would not be for this September, it would be for the next September based on our work with DOE.
And again, maybe it would help to explain to the audience, our hands being tied by the DOE as compared to the commissioners or a builder just going out and buying a building. It would be clear to me to let them know what our restrictions are.
Well, as far as the referendum and actually spaces, there are a lot more red tape that we need to go through with our architect and the SDA and the NJDOE as far as moving the building forward. Now, again, to your earlier point, though, with Mr. Scolaris possibly, we had those timelines established. Those timelines have been backed up because we have not taken the necessary steps, but those timelines are still established, and we can say go at any point in time. I think we need to revisit the physical recommendations based on the potential of having a separate piece of property. But there are a number of issues that come up with that piece of property and its potential that at this retreat the board should discuss. The other piece is if we need to truly rush, there are many things that we could do in the short term. However, we've gotten a great deal of feedback that it was important to the folks at Washington and at Yannicos for this senior year. And so unless we were able to tell people, and again, we don't need to go back on promises, but multiple people reach out to me specifically and say, I've heard talk that. And again, while the board is the one that makes the decision to inform me with back and forth exchange of information, I have never heard any different than we were going to honor that. So if we were going to move students out of the building physically, we were going to give them the respect of having that year to plan and have the appropriate 5th grade now ceremonies if they would be there.
That's correct. The Yannicos PTO, when we met with them, made it explicitly clear to us that they wanted their 5th grade students, which will be 6th grade now, to graduate from Yannicos school before we moved into the middle school. And we promised we would do that.
And that
was part, it was your PTO, in all due respect, that made that presentation to us.
And again, I don't disagree with it. We've had good conversation with a number of people, but at the end of the day, that guided our decision making at the end of last year, and needs to guide our decision making now. Most importantly, though, is the timeliness of applying to the DOE and working on staffing, which is why, again, recommendations being what they are, the board has to have this conversation. So again, my recommendation is that if the board is still of the mind that full middle school is beneficial for the district, if bringing 6th grade here alleviates the issues with 5 different buildings, because even though we have 2 medium schools, those schools are suffering under staff and under space issues as well as being able to provide students the most appropriate space based on class requirements and the rest. We are within best practice, we are within code, but we always ask ourselves to be better. Yes.
So I'd just like to explain a couple different things. One is because we're talking about referendum and difference from the town. I just want to do a couple of things if I could. So first off, Board of Education and Board of Commissioners have to do things 2 different ways. Board of Commissioners can actually adopt capital and spend the money, no approval, no voters, no anything. For us to spend the money, we have to first, as the superintendent talked about, get pre-approved from the board, the DOE first, and we then have to go out for a public voter hearing and a vote. So I just want to give a little history. I've been for 3 referendums in Nutley. The first referendum, which we probably wouldn't be sitting here today 15 years ago went through, was large additions to all the schools back then. None of the current commissioners were there, but we actually had the mayor at the time write a letter not to pass it, and the referendum failed hugely in this town. The second we went out, and some of us served on that committee, Commissioner Scarpelli, that's on the commission now, we put a program together, Save Our Schools. We pared it back to get something voted through, and we did this school and some others, and then we were able to get a small one through a few years ago, just to do a small number piece on the high school. So just to let you know, the numbers, and believe me, as Mr. and I'm or Lisa, this and I. We've really worked on these numbers, they're crunched, the additions, I mean, this new piece of property actually, I don't want to say, it actually makes the school better than we were if we're able to obtain this. We're still having trouble with the DOE on that. So understand there's DOE approval, and then we have to go out and get the voters' approval, and really get a committee together to do that, as we did, I call it the Save Our Schools Committee I served on. But the problem is with the, and this was already go till Roach announced the property, and then, of course, you know, with the commissioners, nobody can give a strong commitment to come out and support it. Those are the large issues that the board has to look at and then get support to be able to move forward. Just so you understand the difference, that they can spend money today, they need no referendum or anything. We have a set process, and then also includes the referendum. I just wanted to let you know.
Mr. Larry, let me just make a comment.
Sure.
I know what you said. The purchase of the property is not a guarantee.
Right,
No, just I'm
like you said,
talking
there's some
amongst the board here
problems.
now.
There's some problems.
So it's not a guarantee.
Right.
We do have plans with this building that we had from prior.
Right, that's what I said. So we have good plans.
That's right, this is
Well,
what
let
it
us-
says. Just
oh,
let's
I'm
talk,
sorry.
just so you understand.
Yeah, and speaking about us as a board, okay?
That's what I'm just trying to say, so we can't be guaranteed
Okay.
that the property is going to work, that we're going to be able to
No,
buy
I
it.
agree.
But we like
I said
it.
there were trouble.
But then we need to talk about that, all right, Russ? What is our next step? I was not pleased with the response from our attorney. First of all, the response back from the attorney, he works for us. I thought, I would have expected something more positive in his feedback. I know he dealt with the person down at DOE, but I would expect him to go there and make the argument for me, and I know you will too, on the size of our population of the district, logistically where we are.
Karen and I had an exchange with him, you can correct me, but I made clear that I want to make sure we made our strongest argument. My understanding is he's worked with this person before. There's a process we have to follow, and as soon as we need to make that argument, which is the fact that we're landlocked, the fact that our numbers have grown, the fact that program, et cetera, basically using the demographer's report, using the architect's findings in the rest. At that point, we will make the strongest possible case. In the meantime, he's trying to get this through as quickly as possible.
All right, what is he trying to get through? Do we need to give him permission to take another step, or is he's where he wants to be right now?
He's passing on the appropriate information to the DOE to make sure that we get approval just for the initial purchase. He's also demonstrated that he's been made aware that there may be concerns with the payment process based on what we discussed, but that he's willing to work through that as well. And he knows that we absolutely want the piece of property.
And the landowner, where do we, what's our next step with him? Have we given him a letter of intent to research
I would
buying the
say,
property?
Chair, I would say I'm the landowner, until we determine a way of financing it and making it acceptable. I don't think we can meet with him and talk to him yet.
Financing's not a problem. We have the money to buy it.
How
We
to
need
give it to him, you know, he has concerns about the money, so we need to speak with, I would assume, if we're not getting to our attorneys, this might be an opportunity to sit down with, our commissioners, maybe Commissioner Evans, and
Just to
give us
clarify,
some insight.
just to clarify, this piece of property came into play recently. It wasn't that this piece of property was always here, our intention was to purchase it when the long-range facility committee was out looking at this, so that kind of like changed.
Well, this is a better idea.
Well, for the
If
better.
we can do it.
For the better, if we get the
The
property.
bill's new compared to adding on to an addition, it's a lot cheaper. We could probably build big enough to cover all our issues, but we still have to be able to acquire the property. We have to be able to pay it the way we need to make the deal. So I think we need to speak with the commissioners. We
Yeah, I
definitely need to
think-
speak with Mr. Evans and see if there's a way that we can do this together.
Only because, as you know, the landowner is, I've been talking to the landowner, he's a friend, and he's getting a little shaky because the Board of Education 10 years ago did the same thing with him, then dropped him. And I wouldn't want, I'm not saying we're going to do that, I would hope the board is still on with trying to pursue this, but I did want to, well,
You want to
not
make
give
it-
him some encouragement, but
you,
certainly let him know where we are in the process.
If you'd like to set up a meeting, set him up, we'll meet again.
Yep.
If you like, I have no problem with that.
Well, the board's okay with that.
Are you okay with us? We'll sit down and make.
Yeah, I think if he's interested,
We'll set up a meeting,
what's
we
going
have
on.
to, we'll reassure him.
And I think, I think too, you know, that piece of property is worth more to us as the Board of Education.
Yeah.
Because we're landlocked, we really can't go we can't move this building around, we only have so much property. So having this, acquiring this is worth a lot more to us than it would be to anybody else that's looking to purchase it.
I did a little work over the weekend, and I did speak to some people that are in the know, and I made myself some notes so I wouldn't, as Danny would say, forget what I'm talking about since I'm senile. The assessment by the town does not necessarily represent the actual or true value of the property. They are valuing the property with two small businesses, two small apartments that we all know are in disrepair. The property is in need of repair. They're also assuming we will continue with this type of business. That is not the case, and we will be worth much more when we address the changes we need to make the annex fit the middle school. So this piece of property to us and to the town is going to be worth a lot more if we put the addition on the middle school than it will be to buy the property and continue with two small businesses and two apartments, which we don't want to.
Agreed, but we're all in agreement that we want to exercise this first. We do have plans for this school if we have to. We go out tomorrow for a referendum,
Well, I think.
because we have plans, but we want to exercise this
Right.
option first.
Right, we shouldn't go out for a referendum if we're thinking about purchasing that,
Exactly.
because it would change everything, and then it would.
So,
it's the worst thing.
That's
Two things on that. One is the great thing about the property that's adjoining us, we can build a better school and the lower cost, because we don't have to tear apart as much of this building to do it, so that's a great thing, because we can build it and not affect the students. If many of them are in other construction, if you have older students, construction's in school the same time the school is not good. That allows us to build a large addition without affecting the main body being here, so that's an important piece. But number two, putting my old hat on, I think we should engage Assemblyman Caputo, as when I was the legislator here, and we helped get some of the other funds in for the schools, but I think Assemblyman Caputo should be engaged with the DOE as soon as possible to also assist us on that.
That's a good point. It's going to be political.
Fair enough.
Trend.
Do we have a timeline of when this, what we're thinking?
Well, here's the only issue. When we first met with the property owner, and we thought this would go through a lot easier than it seems to be, we told him, since we have the money in our capital improvement budget already to buy that property, we gave him the budget time, which was May or June. But that might have been false.
But Charlie, in our defense,
Yeah,
he's looking for something
Yeah.
that is making it complicated, because if it was just 900,000, we could do it easily.
It was just the price, but
It's how we're making the payments.
he's at the same age that I am. He's looking to retire, and he's looking to make sure he doesn't get hammered with the big influx of money, and he wants to spread it out over a amount of years. We don't have, we as boards of education don't have that flexibility in the state of New Jersey, so we're trying to work something out on the way to do it. But June was the timeline that we had given him.
I was just wondering so that we can maybe contact the architect, so if we're pretty much certain that we're going to do that, to get some new plans in the works. So that we can go for a referendum as
I
soon
think if
as
we can come
possible.
up with a formula of how to make this payment plan, that's how you mentioned something earlier, that it might be that we can do it, if not, with advice from our commissioners and maybe through the commissioner, that form of government might be able to do it for us easier than we can do it. But once we can agree on that and agree on the purchase, then we can go forward.
Okay, just so that we can engage the architect.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Try, we've already waited.
Yeah, I just think that until we have something concrete, where, we don't want to spend all this money making plans, and then the Department of Education turns around and says, no, we can't purchase this
Yes.
property.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
Mr. Lappin, one question. I know that we had spoken about this on a couple of different occasions. I know you had mentioned the best practices, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th seems to be a model of what new schools are basically doing. Taking on that property, does it put us in a position to potentially accommodate that particular situation? Where we'd be able to do a 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and maybe annex it where there'll be a crossover on the 2nd floor or something like that?
Right, and again, just to clarify, middle level, best practice is considered 5 to 8, and any combination of that is considered middle level. You can go to one, for middle school, for just 8th grade, 3, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, and 5, 6, 7, 8. The initial proposals, again, did not include 5th grade for a variety of reasons. Coming to this building, just 6.
Agreed.
My understanding from just initial specs, we could potentially add enough classrooms to handle both grade levels if the board so chose. The other piece, though, came up in a different conversation, which is the other building we have not talked about, which is across the street. Our high school is already overcrowded. Our class sizes are high.